All right, everyone, welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Soelberg from Gilbert PD in Arizona. 31 and a half years experience in law enforcement. He's a graduate of the FBI National Academy and a graduate of the Major Cities Chiefs Association Police Executive Leadership Institute. Welcome to the show, Chief Soelberg.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and talk to you about wellness in law enforcement.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So I don't know if you know this, but my introduction into the law enforcement wellness space actually started in Gilbert. So,
Oh, really?
I used to live in Gilbert. I owned a home in downtown, right in the Heritage District, and I was teaching a free class to the city. It was a city event. And there was another gentleman there who was teaching like a HIIT workout, and I was teaching the cool down recovery piece of it. He was a sergeant at Phoenix Regional Police Academy, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to, teach my recruit class some injury prevention and stress management?" And I was like, "Sure." And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But that was the start of everything for me, was a free class that I was teaching to the city of Gilbert. And now fast forward 9 years, here we are.
That's awesome. It's crazy how those little connections, they come around years later. Happens all the time where you have one meeting and then 10 years later, you're working with the person or you're working for them sometimes. It's a small world. It really is.
Yeah, his story was actually really funny because as he kind of introduced me, I volunteered for a long time and I, worked at the academy level, and then I started working with local agencies. But at the time he was like, "I'm going to introduce you to some people because I'm leaving." And I was like, "You're leaving? Where are you going?" And he's like, I'm out of here. I'm going to become a firefighter." And he left to become a firefighter. And from my knowledge, he's actually a firefighter for Gilbert.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
You have to give me his name later and I'll track him down.
Yeah. Isn't that so interesting? But, obviously I lived in Gilbert for a long time. I'm from Arizona, and I'm always really excited when I can have a chief from my hometown on here. And the last couple of weeks, I've had several chiefs from Arizona. So thank you for representing and showcasing what you guys are doing in your city. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're glad to be here.
What is you've been in law enforcement for, 31 going on 32 years. What is one thing that people might be surprised to know about you?
Oh, good question. So I was born in Oregon and I grew up in Utah. And, when I was going to school, I initially thought I wanted to be an attorney. And then I got into college and realized I don't want to be an attorney. There's tons of attorneys, and that's just not my forte. And then I wanted to be a Fed. I wanted to be the FBI. And they just weren't hiring in the mid 90s. And it was very difficult to get into. And the recommendation was to get into law enforcement. And in Utah, pay is not, and I don't know how much better it is now, but the pay was not good at all. And I started in Mesa. My starting pay was what they were topping out at in Utah. And so I think that's something that I've been here for so long, they assume I'm from Arizona, and most of Arizona are transplants. Most in my academy, we had 48 in my academy, and well over half were from out of state. And it really is a transplant community. And that's what kind of makes us special. We've got a little bit of everything in Arizona, and especially in Gilbert, of a lot of people coming from different areas. They love the weather in the winter. We endure it in the summer when it's blazing hot. But everyone's, got a hidden background that you don't really know until you get a chance to talk to them.
That is really interesting. I think people don't really realize that it's almost like meeting a unicorn when you meet someone who's actually from Arizona. I am one of those unicorns, born and raised out here, and my fiance is too, but it's very rare. Everyone for the most part is from different areas. I do think we're a really good kept secret that I hope maybe stays secret for a little bit longer, because I think everyone is afraid of our summers. But I don't think it's that bad. I think that the trade-off of, the winter and how beautiful our area is. And for anyone who hasn't been to Gilbert, Gilbert is a great area in the suburb of Phoenix, very beautiful, family oriented. I think that it's a really good kept secret. So that is interesting.
Yeah, it is. And I'll brag about Gilbert for a second, because people may not know where Gilbert is. And as you mentioned, it's just a suburb of Phoenix, but it's a town but it's a town of 292,000 people. So it is a very large city. We just go by town still. But it's a growing city. We anticipate that we'll get about 330,000 people. So we're one of the 100 largest cities in the U.S. I think we're currently 82nd in size. So while it's a small town feel, which is what attracts people here, crime is relatively low, but we still have a job to do. And it's a great place to live and raise family.
Yeah. Well, and Gilbert used to be farmland, and it wasn't somewhere to be. And it's grown very, very quickly over the last, decade plus, I would say, maybe 10, 15 years, very quickly. Someone told me one time, if you had a little bit of money and a little bit of foresight and you could invest in Gilbert, you'd be a very rich person at this point.
Yes, you would. Yes, you would. Like you said, it was all farmland. And one of my second house, the crop dusters would buzz the house at 3 a.m. while they're dusting all the crops. And it's changed a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for bragging about your city. And I'm sure everyone who's listening who is from Gilbert appreciates that too. So you came from Mesa PD, and Mesa PD is also a suburb of Phoenix, also a large organization. And they are also an agency that's prioritizing wellness. I think that a lot of the agencies in the Valley are the same in prioritizing wellness. But when did wellness become a part of the conversation for you as a leader?
As an officer going in patrol in the academy and then a detective, and then as I promoted up, wellness in Mesa, and like, as you mentioned, really in Arizona, it's been, I like to say we're the leading edge on wellness and PTSD and making sure that we're taking care of our people. And, being on scene for critical incidents and seeing how imperative it is to make sure that you're ready for that. With whether it's the peer team, the administrative process that goes with it, and the aftermath after the investigation. And that's where I think really the peer support and having programs and different opportunities, because it's not a one size fits all. Mm-hmm. And you've got to have a variety, because people will react differently based on how they grew up, what they relate to, and what they are willing and comfortable to do. And as I came throughout my career and rose from rank from sergeant to assistant chief in Mesa, I had the opportunity as a lieutenant and then as commander and assistant chief to supervise our peer support teams, and really got more involved in that time. So it was always important because you saw the value of it. And also being over hiring for a while, people get burned out. And part of the mental and the physical toll this job takes, you've got to make sure that the mind is as prepared as your body. And so we focus in the academy on physical fitness, but we really in our academies try instituting that awareness of the mental side as well. Because if you're burned out, you're not going to make it 25 plus years.
Yeah. I saw a quote one time that I really liked, and it stuck with me. And it said, the best training is between your ears.
Yeah, that's good.
And I really liked that a lot because we forget about it. I think that the physical is really tangible. We can see, when we're getting stronger or more flexible, whatever that looks like, we can see the physical changes. But to remember that the training between your ears is just as, if not more, important.
No, it is. And that's something that we've talked about. And it's not just the employee, the officer. We've tried incorporating, whether it's family, spouses, fiancés, whoever your support system is in the academy, making sure that not only the employee, the officer understands it as a recruit of what they're going to go through, but educating the family and the support system so they can see when someone's not acting normal or not reacting the way they normally would. Yeah. And hopefully they can work it out with each other and talk about it and recognize that. And so you're not afraid to bring stuff up at home. And some people totally separate work and home, which is fine. But you got to have some sort of support system besides a bottle or the bar or wherever you're going to go. Yeah. And so that's something we try to institute is as we're ramming all that knowledge into your head, don't forget that piece of taking care of yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And it's obviously you've seen the progression of wellness in your profession over the last, 30 years. But when I started 9 years ago, I remember multiple people coming up to me and they're like, hey, and they were looking out for me. It wasn't like, meant to be mean or anything like that. I genuinely felt like they were just trying to like set expectations that were realistic, but they were like, hey, just so you know, this is not a part of our culture. It never will be. If you want to volunteer your time, like we won't say no, but just so you know, this is not going to be a part of our culture. And now fast forward even a short 9 years, and it very much is a part of the conversation. It very much is a part of the culture. And so it's been really exciting to see the progress and to see this become more integrated into, I wouldn't say every organization, but many organizations across the country. One of the things that I'm seeing, and I know a lot of chiefs are kind of questioning is, how do you create a program or resources that don't just check a box, and people are talking about how wellness is kind of a buzzword. And I think that there always has to be a deeper reason why you do the things so that it isn't a check the box. There's purpose behind what we're doing. So do you have any advice or, anything that you can add to creating a meaningful resource or a meaningful program that has a deep-seated why? And what is that why for you guys?
Yeah. My best advice, there's not one magic pill that, hey, if you do this, you're going to be successful. A lot of it comes from the culture of your department, the culture, and even outside your department. If you are in a city or a state where it's very anti-law enforcement, or you just don't feel like you have the support system, that can make it even more difficult because you feel like everyone's against you. But within your department and trying to establish that culture of it's okay to not be okay. And in Arizona, with our retirement system, we do have the ability, which some states still don't. If you have a PTSD work-related injury in some other state, you're just gone. If you can't do this job anymore, you're terminated or you resign. And here we actually can get a medical. And obviously, our goal is to prevent that. And with our preventative programs, we're trying to recognize when there's an issue and how to appropriately deal with those issues before it does become a problem and costs you a job because you either can't do it anymore or you make a mistake and you get arrested or something bad happens and you're no longer in this profession. And so I think it starts from the top down. As you hire people, you've got to ingrain the importance of it and show the value. And then, as I mentioned, from the top down, you've got to speak it, believe it, and accept it and encourage that growth. As you get new sergeants, lieutenants, commanders, they are looking at their employees. They're trying to recognize when someone's a little off, their totals are down, or they seem stressed. They're always talkative. Now they're not. And part of it's suicide prevention, but also the part of it is just that motivation. It may have nothing to do with tragic calls. It may just be a workload that they feel that the responsibilities and the workload, they just need a break. And so making sure that it's okay to have those conversations and making sure that the resources are there. Some are very open and they'll talk about issues they've seen, and some want to make sure that nobody knows about it, and that's fine. And so you've got to have a variety of different resources for people. Some want them, whether it's online, on an app, in person. We brought in clinicians. Both our police department and fire department has brought on-site clinicians. Hopefully we'll eventually have them full time. Right now they're 20 hours a week. But in addition to that, if they don't want to walk, and we've secluded it as much as possible, but we want it to be okay to, hey, I got to go see the doc today. It's just like going for your annual physical. Your mental health checkup shouldn't be any different than your normal physical that you would do every year to make sure everything's in check. And to me, it's just having a variety because not everyone's going to want to go see a clinician. They may want to just read and or have a support group or do other things. And if you just have one program, one thing to do, you're going to miss people. And so they've got to have a variety that they can choose from and support them when they do that. And when they have a problem, make sure that they've got all the resources to get through it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the number one thing that I always hear is, and I don't want to say fear. I don't know if that's the right word, but maybe having having reservations about implementing things because there is a question mark, are people going to use it? Are people going to benefit from it? And so how do you have the confidence to put things forward, or maybe how do you quantify success in order to put things out there? Because I know a lot of chiefs are like, well, if we're going to spend the money, we want to make sure that it's being used, but then how do you define success, and what is that, percentage that we want to see? And it's hard to quantify that sometimes, because I think everyone would agree if one person benefits from it and we save one life, it's all worth it. Everything's worth it. So how do you, strategically maybe put in place these resources without maybe a guarantee that, because like you said, not everyone's going to use it, but we don't have a guarantee on how many people are going to use it.
Yeah. And the other downside is, if everyone does want to use it, do you have the resources to accommodate that?
Exactly.
That's another downfall.
Yeah.
To me, part of it begins for me to get to my boss to make sure that they have the buy-in, and which I do, both at Mason and Gilbert, we've had that buy-in of knowing the importance for both PD and fire together. We've worked together, as public safety partners. And the other thing is not focusing just on the sworn. There's so many support staff, dispatchers, the jailers, our front desk officers, every crime scene techs. It's not just about sworn, making sure that these resources are available for everybody in all the different fields, and making sure your bosses. Sometimes we do rely a lot on data, but when you talk about wellness, sometimes it's not a stat you can track. We do our best for every program that we create a way of reporting anonymously. We have a recharge room where they can do red light therapy, sauna, cold plunge. We have our therapy dog. Everything they do, there's a barcode that they can just do a quick little survey. Did you find it beneficial? Any recommendations for improvements? Is there anything we could do better? And so some of it's anecdotally. The feedback we get is positive, but sometimes you can't show. It's kind of like when you prevent a crime, you don't have a stat to show that crime did occur. Same thing with here. If we prevent someone from committing suicide or quitting the job, that's a win. Now, unless they tell us, we may not know that they were making that decision. But looking at your attrition rates, and which is, as we've grown, we're losing people because they're hitting their 20, 25 years, and it's starting that new batch of officers for the next 25 years. So it's got to be an ongoing program, and you do your best to track the data and see that cost benefit. The other thing you mentioned how you started of making sure that the officers, the recruits are physically, they're stretching, they're making sure that we're trying to prevent injuries. And that's part of it too. And that's hard to show long term. But if we can prevent our on-duty injuries, prevent career ending injuries, that obviously saves us a ton of money in paying people out, but also having to hire somebody new in the years it takes to get that expertise back up to where that person left. So there's the intangibles, and you got to have the buy-in above you and below you. That this is beneficial, and not be afraid to fail. Obviously, we're not going to put people at risk, but some programs, they're great. They may be a fad, and they're like, yeah, it was good for a while, but people don't really care anymore. Well, what's the next thing? And we're not always chasing these flashy things, but if there's a benefit to somebody, like you said, if we can save one life, great. If we can save 50, even better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. There's a few things you said in there that I really appreciated, is not being afraid to fail, understanding that the ROI is the people. But I think it's really smart to have little QR codes around everywhere so you can get that feedback. I just had a visualization of your little therapy dogs running around with a QR code on their collar.
It's on his vest. He has
Is it really?
Vest,
oh
and
my
the QR
gosh.
code's on his vest. So you can just take a quick little snapshot.
I can imagine that they have the best glowing reviews out of everything.
Oh yeah. Well, and you feel bad for the handler, because the dog will walk in and everyone's like, "Oh, Finley, we love you." And like, "Oh, hey, how you doing? Forgot about you." So we got to make sure we take care of the handler.
They're like, the feedback's like, was it Finley you said?
Finley is our current.
They're like, yeah. Finley's great, but we don't need the other guy.
Someone's got to walk him around and beat him.
That's awesome. I know obviously you guys have a robust wellness program and you highlighted some of those things already. But I did want to dive a little bit into some of those focus areas for you guys. And I know that you focus a lot on resiliency, you focus a lot on stress management and preventing burnout and suicide prevention. What is your definition of resiliency and how do you train it?
Yeah, and then people may have a different definition, but to me, resiliency is how do you cope with stress, and how do you recognize when you are stressed? It may be emotionally, it may be either too quick or too slow to make decisions. For me, resiliency is recognizing that something is stressing you, and how are you going to deal with it, cope with it, and sometimes that's putting that problem off for a later day if it doesn't have to be addressed right now, or putting everything else to the side so you can focus on what that trigger is. But for me, resiliency, it's both at work and at home, and making sure you have that balance. And if you have no one at home, then what other resources do you have? Hobbies, sports, hiking, whatever your activities are. You've got to figure out how to de-stress, and that's where the physical fitness often comes in. It's a stress relief, even though you're working your body and your mind, but it is a way of reducing that stress. And so for me, resiliency is having the support system, having the knowledge of what you're going through and what others are going through, and a lot of people say, I'm fine. How are you doing? I'm fine. And others will say, you're not.
Yeah.
You need some help.
I had another chief on recently, and he said that fine is not an emotion. And so he doesn't accept fine. And that's a part of like what they've tried to do within the culture of the organization is if someone says, how are you doing? And someone says, fine, they're like, fine's not an emotion. So like, right. I'm going to ask you again, how are you doing? Right. Until you find it. Because that is default mode, right? Like we're all just like, yeah, good, fine. Like, sure. Yeah. Like just kind of checking a box. And so he's like, fine is not an emotion. We don't accept fine around here.
No, that's good. That's a good philosophy. It's like, how was your weekend? Oh, it was great. Well, I'm sure you did a lot more than what that explained. So it's good to challenge people in a positive way. But let us know, because people won't talk unless you get them to talk.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've heard you say throughout the entire conversation is looking out for each other, early detection, trying to notice some of those early warning signs, trying to make sure that you are having good conversations with people. And if you know that someone isn't okay, being able to kind of flag that or ask better questions. But there was kind of a thread throughout the whole conversation of really being proactive and making sure that you're looking out for each other.
Yeah. And that's something that I think all these supervisors, each line, and even as coworkers, it's okay. Like I said before, it's okay to not be okay. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean someone's suicidal or they're about to quit their job. It's just you recognize when those stressors are coming into play. And, if someone's being slammed by calls, if you're not, and you're their beat partner or working next to them, pick up a call, do what you can. And it's okay to need some help. And sometimes what you need is some time off. And it's not that you did anything wrong. And it's just a matter of some people just work. And sometimes it's because they need the money. And sometimes we're short staffed and they just feel guilty of not accepting that. And they'll do everything they can to help out. But at some point, we've actually had to put in some policies of you have to have at least one day off. We don't want you working here every single day. You've got to have some relief. And just having that culture and that mindset of it's okay to separate and take a break, whether it's the day or take a week off or whatever that may be. But, and then when someone does have something that's impacting them greatly, that it's okay. It's just no different than being in a foot pursuit and breaking your foot. You walk around with a cast, everyone can see it. Well, it's a different when it's in your mind, but it's not like you're crazy. It's just that you're going through stuff and it's going to take some while to work it out. And some people make it through and some people don't. But the goal, whether you keep it, stay in the career or not, is to make sure you're alive and that you're safe and that whatever, if you can't do this career anymore, how can we help you to that next step, whatever that may be.
Yeah. I'm sure you've heard this saying too, and it's kind of an extension of what you just said, but I've heard it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay there. And the goal is like, how can we make sure that you have the resources so that you can keep moving forward in a positive way? Like that's the goal, right? Like we want to make sure that you have longevity and quality of life in your career and in your home life. And I had someone say this recently, and I put a lot of things in perspective, because they said that forever in law enforcement, it was, our goal is to get you home safely. And they're like, that is still the goal, but our goal is also to get them to come back. We want them to come back the next day too. And so, I know you also put a focus on, stress management and preventing burnout. And I appreciate you saying some of those things that can help, some of those resources. And really it's the action component. Like we can talk all day long about, the challenges, we can give education, we can give resources, but until there's implementation of these things, it's not going to benefit anybody. Right. And so, the number one question that everyone is asking, because obviously as an organization, you guys are providing a lot and you're making sure that you have those resources available. How do we get people to take action for themselves? How do we get them to actually do the thing?
Yeah, and that's difficult. Every person is different. Like I said in the beginning, they got different triggers, things that they like doing or don't like doing. And so to me, it's again, having that variety of different things that they can do, because hopefully one of those different programs or different opportunities piques their interest and they'll say yes. And sometimes it's just having that knowledge base. You study all these different laws and you may not have to apply them, and then 5 years down the road, you have that one incident. And now I've got to apply these laws. So it's kind of having that same knowledge base of the mental health resiliency and what opportunities they have, so that when you do have a situation, whether at home or at work, that you need some help, and you know what to do, and you're not afraid to ask. You're not afraid, whether it's anonymously or however you want to get that help. And it's okay to ask for that help, and we're here to support you, and we'll work through it. And it's not uncommon for us to have 3 or 4 people out at a time, because they're working through stuff, and we're doing everything we can to get them through it. And when they're back, it's great, and we just do everything we can to make sure they're continue to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it goes back to, we talked about being proactive. And I love that you said they might not need it now, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to need it in the future. I used to call it the charcuterie board of wellness. And I was actually here locally. I was at a first responder conference, and someone came up to me and they're like, Paige, that's too hard to say. You have to say the buffet. So now we call it the buffet of options, because charcuterie board is too hard for people to say.
It is. One other program I'll plug real quick, because the name is what I'm getting at. It's called Struggle Well. And it's through Boulder Crest, out of Tucson. Tucson PD was one of the first ones here in Arizona. They put their entire department through it, and it's now made its way to the Valley. And we put almost 100. We were at 98 students so far for just PD that we put through. And the name Struggle Well. Everyone's going to struggle, but what the goal is to do well as you struggle through those issues. So everyone's going to do it. Just do it well, rather than letting it burn you out. Get those obstacles, acknowledge them, and it goes into that resiliency. And once you know that you're under those stressors and how you need to react and how you cope with that, then work through that so it doesn't become a problem.
When you said that, it lit like this competitive fire inside of me, because I am very competitive. And I was like, yeah, if I'm going to struggle, I'm going to be the best at struggling. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to suck at struggling. I'm going to be the best at struggling. Yeah. I like that a lot. I think the way that we present things is really important. How can we have a mental shift when it comes to some of the things that we're talking about? How can we understand that these things are strengths, not weaknesses? How can we normalize it? How can we present it in a way that resonates? And so I appreciate you saying that, because I do think to say like everybody struggles, of course, everybody struggles. None of us are getting to the end of this life unscathed. we're all going to have heartache, and we're all going to have, various levels of trauma and things that we go through in our lives. But when you do, because you will, how can you have the resources to struggle well through it? I think that's really cool. And I think that the more we have conversations like this, we'll start to shift maybe that perception. And we know that there's still a stigma in some ways to wellness, maybe a fear of, looking weak, or, being, I'm putting all these in quotes, broken, or whatever that, perception is. And so my hope is through these conversations, we start to shift that a little bit.
Yep. No, and everything we can do helps. This included.
I agree. My last question for you is for that younger generation, the young men and women who are entering into the career today. What words of wisdom would you share with them?
I've got a few for you. For one, trust your gut. It's something I always talk about in the academy setting, and when we do reviews of critical incidents. And I was a driving instructor for years, and I would always say, when you get that feeling that this is messed up, this we're driving crazy, then you are. Listen to you're self-conscious, and whether it's a crazy incident, whether you're going in a situation like something feels off. Wait for backup, whatever the case may be. And when deciding how to handle a case, common sense, what makes sense? Because usually the law, for the most part, is based on common sense. And so when you're struggling to make that decision, just always do what's right. Trust your gut instincts. That's normally going to be right. The other thing I'll add is to advocate for yourself, educate yourself. One thing I've seen over the last 10, 15 years, a change to where, and everyone's different, but when I was looking to move up as a supervisor, and even as an FTO, you're taking those little baby steps to leadership. I wanted to know what it takes. And so I advocated for myself. I talked to those who were doing it. What's it like? Do I really want to do it? And so I learned what the job was. And then I had good mentors that allowed me, as I'm working towards that, to do some of those responsibilities. And we've had some that are like, well, I don't know what supervisor do, and I don't know how to get there. Like, other than just saying that right now, what have you done? You've got to advocate for yourself, learn, try things. We have a lot of opportunities for mentorship. And so don't be afraid to ask. And on that same note, don't be afraid to acknowledge when you don't know something. So don't take action because you think, I guess this is right. It's okay to say pause if you're in a situation where you can, and find out what the answer is. And you've got a lot of resources around you. So learn from those who've been here for a long time, but also don't be afraid to try new things, and always do what's right. And that's within our career. Integrity is the number one thing. We lose more people for that in the academy than anything else. There aren't white lies in our career. A lie's a lie. And so always be honest and do the right thing.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on here and representing Gilbert and showcasing all the things that you guys are doing in wellness.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Of course.